Hey, Travel Brats, happy Tuesday. We are so excited because we are back with Rikimah Glymph. Rikimah, hey, it's good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you also.
Yeah, and I loved our last episode and we loved getting to know you. And I'm excited because we touched a little bit in the first episode on wellness. And I want to go further into a deep dive with you because you are an expert and start with maybe talking about your 8 pillars of wellness.
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I started going on this journey trying to understand what is the big deal about why it is that people say, hey, I'm eating, I'm working out, and I don't feel good. I still don't feel like $1,000,000. And through sort of my curiosity, because this is the thing that always gets me down these rabbit holes, is I'm like, but why is that? Nobody's questioning why it is that people are still working out and looking good, eating good, and still unhappy. And then I discovered that, oh, well, it's because there's all these other areas that we have to care about, right?
Yeah.
So, if you are finding yourself depressed, but you're working out and you're eating, and the doctors, it's the first thing everybody tells you, go work out, go eat the right foods, right? But you're still
Mhm.
depressed. The first thing I start wondering is, well, how are you tending to your mental garden? What's going
Mhm.
on in your mind that has it so that it's feeling the stressors of whatever it is that's going on in your world. If that's not the thing, then I start going down the rabbit hole around, well, are you hanging out with friends? Are you getting love from people you're close to? How social are you being? Are you going out? Or are you staying in the house? Sometimes, it's about financial wellness, right? I just lost my job. Or maybe I didn't just lose my job. I'm working 4 of these jobs and I still can't make everything work out, right? Because
Yeah.
again, people are taking care of extended families, families have grown. And so the questions around the why are the thing that sort of drive these 8 pillars of wellness. If
Mhm.
you're not feeling good, let's go down every single one. How's your spirit? Right. And spirituality doesn't mean going to church. A lot of people misconstrue that and say, well, I go to church or I don't go to church. And I'm like, that's not what I asked. That's your business. That's not mine. I didn't ask that part. I'm asking, how are you connected to the world around you? How's your spirit connected? Do you see the world as being much bigger than just yourself? Are you plugged into it in a way that allows for you to feel like you are spiritually connected to the world
Mhm.
around you? Right? For me, it's about making sure that I'm outside with my son all the time because when his friends come through the neighborhood and they start playing football or acting like ragamuffins, I want to be there to mentor them. I want to be there if they need a snack. I want to be there to catch the football if they need Miss G to go catch the football. And for
Mhm.
me, that both helps my son social, but it also helps me because now
Yeah.
I'm connected to, I'm invested in what's happening with these kids and the community. And that's
Mhm.
outside of my home, that's outside of myself, right? So the 8 pillars of wellness really, really tries to think about what are these other sections in our lives that
Mhm.
might be playing a role in why it is that we either feel really, really good or we feel not so great at all.
I like that. And I think what you touched on with connection, I feel like because we're humans, we just crave connection. And when you
Yep.
don't have the sense of community, or again, if you're traveling a lot and you don't have a good relationship with your friends or your family or anything, there's this sense of loneliness that you fall into. And it really, I think, for me at least, filters into a lot of other parts of my life if I don't have that connection. So yeah, I love that. I love that. And so 8 pillars, wellness, the impact of not caring. Let's talk about that first.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you don't care to figure this part out, you will struggle. I don't
Mhm.
know anybody that isn't struggling just on basic lifing.
Yeah.
Like there is always something that's showing up. And so I tell people all the time, listen, care about these 8 pillars because at the end of the week, every week you should be asking yourself, how am I doing on my finances? How am I doing on my spirit? How am I doing on my occupational? For me, even when it comes to occupational wellness, a lot of people are miserable on their jobs. Right.
Mm,
And so the question is, it's like, how are we doing there? And if we're not doing good there at the end of the week, you know what you're working on in the following week, right? Because
right.
that also gives us a sense of purpose and a sense of connection to our own experience in the world. I can't say I'm well if I'm not pouring into myself. And that was something that I was running into for years because I was parenting as a single parent with my son and my
Mm,
entire life wrapped into him. The
mm,
problem is that I looked up one day and said, wait a minute, what's going on with you? And why are not hanging out? And you mentioned something around the loneliness of travel. And it's
mm,
true. It has really redefined my friend networks also. Because
mm,
what happened was I realized that for the way I live my life, right? Again, a flighty Gemini who loves to go get into the mix of all the things.
Right.
I can't have the kinds of friends that are needing me to always be dialed in,
Yeah.
right? For my own mental sanity, for my own heart, for the way I live my life. So I actually, when I look around today, I say, wow, all of my friends say, no matter where she is in the world, the minute she calls me, I know that we'll pick right back up where we left off.
Mm.
And that means that like my friend network's even shifted, right? And that was hard for a while. That was really hard to your point. But the truth is like the closer I got to the purpose, the more my life started to rearrange itself the ways that I needed it so that I could be successful in what brings me the most joy,
Yeah.
right? So the level of intentionality that you have to place on making sure that you're observing those different sections of wellness, making sure that you spend that time to yourself. It's only maybe the last 3 years that I've literally told my son, you can feel however you want, but mom deserves an hour to herself. Because I
Yeah.
used to do this thing, but what about me? And it's like, bud, seriously, you have the rest of the 23. I just
Yeah.
need one, right?
Yeah.
So it was also about like coaching other people on how to relate to me, coaching other people on the fact that like my needs were also just as important as their needs. And so we're going to
Yeah.
create that together, right? But it has been very intentional.
Yeah, no, I love that. And in that regard, if I'm somebody who has never really like sat down and assessed my wellness, how could someone self-assess? How can people get in tune with like, am I doing all right? Because that is something that we push off a lot of times and
Yeah,
hide.
yeah. I think all they got to do is look in the mirror. And I think
Mm,
the
mm,
first thing they better start saying to themselves is, don't lie to me. I'm
mm.
talking to you now, right? Don't lie to me. When everybody is asleep and my bathroom door is shut, I am looking in that mirror and I'm saying, girl, you all right over there? What's going on
Yeah.
with you? Why your eyebrows look bushy like this? Like
Love it.
why, or sometimes I tell people like when you are laughing at things, like if you immediately clear it up and it's not even a genuine smile afterwards, you have to ask
Mm,
yourself, you good? You all
yeah.
right? Right? Sometimes I even sit down with my son and say, hey son, how did you experience me this week? My son will be like, girl, you've been
Mm,
yelling all week. And then I know, like, oh yeah, emotionally, you're not all right. Like you need to go fix that because you're not a yeller. You're not, someone who talks to people in different ways. I do lean into my networks around me. I'll ask my
yeah.
son, I ask my friends, I ask neighbors.
Mm.
Hey, when you saw me the other day, what did you think I was cool? Everything. And I ask them to reflect that way for me because sometimes what we think we're putting out and what people are receiving is completely different.
Okay, I love that because for one, I'm someone that kind of just wears the heart on the sleeve and that's a good thing sometimes and a terrible thing a lot of times because you can tell when I'm upset or when I don't agree but also what I don't do well that like my husband is phenomenal at is he's so observant.
Mm,
And like he just observes people like and we'll leave a party and he'll be like so and so looked really sad like the whole time. Do you think they're just tired or do you think they have something going on in their life? And a lot of his friends are that way. And and I'm like, what? Like they're fine. They gave us a present. I mean, they seem like they're in a good mood. And he's like, no, and with me too, and also on another note, with him sometimes he is always like a fairly joyful but serious person, but he has a straight face. And all my friends, because they're like me with the just kind of like extrovertedness, they're like, is he mad? Like, is he okay? And I'm like, well, at least they care about you. So, but I just think the observant,
yeah,
being observant around others and then wanting others and because honestly, Rikima, there are a lot of people, and not just in my generation or yours, but just people in general have a very hard time taking criticism. And I know because I do. And so just saying like, hey, like, how do you think I'm doing? And if it comes out, if what somebody says to you comes out offensive, well, maybe you're not in a bad mood, but you always look like you're in a bad mood. Or when so and so is trying to tell you about something they just started that's very exciting, you don't look amused or you don't look like you're paying attention. That I think is really important because even if you are paying attention or you're good in a good mood, it comes off sometimes to other people as if you don't care.
that's
Uh,
That's right.
yeah,
And it matters, right? It matters for then how
it
people interact
does.
with you. It
Yeah.
matters for then how they go talk about you, right? Because we know that humankind, as much as we can all be loving, there is the thing called the gossip train and stuff, right? You don't want to be the person out here where people are like, yeah, she's fun as long as it's about her.
Right.
So
Right.
going the extra mile, like I used to tell my son this all the time. I said, listen, I got a resting bee face. Let's be clear. My face is what it is. I'm not always smiley. I have to work at smiling at people. Not
Mhm.
because I'm not a happy person. When people get to know me, they're like, girl, you always trying to love up on somebody. And it is true. My heart wants to love up on other people, but I
Mm.
can't change the way that God made my face. So now I have to work extra hard.
Fabulous.
So during the holiday season, because we all just moved into this community, nobody knows each other. And I happen to be the only Black person on my street, literally. So for me, I'm like, no, I'm gonna go and like drop off Trader Joe bags at my neighbor's doors. And that means I'm gonna have some hot cocoa in there. I'm gonna have some like spiked ciders in there. I'm gonna have some chocolate with a little something in it.
Yeah.
Some
Oh,
gingerbread cookies for the kiddos. And I'm gonna
aw,
write a hand note and I'm gonna say, hey, we don't know each other, but I'm looking forward to seeing you around. I just want to wish you a happy holiday season.
I
I gave
love
the
that.
neighbor directly across, and I knew something was different because you could just tell, right? Like if you
Yeah.
look around enough, you know. And my neighbor said, "Well, we don't celebrate Christmas, but we do celebrate Diwali." So the next day, I go to Lush, and Lush, because they always pop with all the good stuff, had Diwali, you know, bath bombs in there. And so instead of bringing them all this holiday Christmas oriented stuff, I brought them the bath bombs that were Diwali. And I did the same thing, wrote the note. My son said, why are you doing that? I said, because I already know that on plain sight, people are probably going to think that I'm not the nicest. People are probably going to assume that I might be standoffish because I've
Mhm.
worked very hard to have a certain energy where I keep away, I propel the
Mhm.
folks who don't want good for me, right? Like it is just a natural thing for me at this point. But I said, I'm very aware of how people first interact with me, how they first acknowledge me, because they haven't heard me speak. They haven't seen me smile. I haven't done anything, right, for them to get to know me.
Mm.
I said, it matters to me that people don't have the wrong impression, though, right? I don't want them to know all of my dirty secrets. I do need them to know that this face, that's just a face because the heart is not in line, it's not aligned that way. And I can't change this
Mm.
face, but I can make sure that I go the extra mile to make sure you know that I'm very welcoming and I'm open and I'm here for you. And so for me, like that stuff matters. And I'm trying to tell, you know, my son the same thing. People are already seeing you before you know that they've seen you,
Mm.
that
Yeah.
they've already started to, you know, create a couple of assumptions about that. You don't need to be the person that everybody is sort of whispering about in the wrong ways. If that's you, if you really are a naughty person or whatever, you got ways about you, then live in that. Okay. You know, don't be mad when they out here in these streets talking all this mess.
Right. Because
But
you
if
you
that's not
deserved it.
right. But if it's not you, you can also lead with who you are so that people don't have room to assume.
Well, and on a smaller note, I mean, that's human connect a big part of human connection that we were talking about, but also like just it's fun to be neighborly and get to know new people. And like you're an extrovert, and I feel like a lot of people don't do that anymore. Like they don't know their neighbors, they don't go say, "Hey," or "I brought you a basket of something." And that's just something that I think is like a dying thing that I don't want to die, that I want to bring
Yeah.
back. Like just like you, it's fun to get to know. And then, not like do things for people so they do things for you, but
Yeah.
if you build community, then like, hey, something happened. Like, I need to run to the hospital for
Right.
something. Can you please watch
Right.
my son or like my house or my dog or whatever? It's just fun to have that community.
It opens
People you
up
can
a
trust.
community so much bigger than you. And funny enough, so I'm actually an introvert. And you may not be able to tell, I'm absolutely an introvert. I get nauseous, my hands start sweating, my head be dizzy, but I force myself out of my own skin all the time
Mm,
because I realize if I stay in this introverted experience, I will be isolated. My heart doesn't want to be isolated. I want to bring your kid hot cocoa. Like I
mm,
want to do the thing. But I will tell adults, I say, listen, I actually love hanging out with kids more than I do adults. Let's be clear, you and I are not playing charades. But if your kids are outside, I'm going to be out there passing out the snacks. Just know that about me. If they are
yeah.
hurt out there, if they are struggling to get to school, I will be the carpool mom. I love children in this way.
Mm.
And I said, and I will like y'all, but I love kids. So let me be me.
Yeah. No, well, you're letting you be you, but at the same time, there's a certain point where you have to say, all right, this is what I just want to do tonight, but I'm not going to be selfish. I'm gonna do a little bit for others. If I'm an introvert and I want to just stay and sit in the bath and watch my show or like just do, but I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna make friends and I'm gonna invite them for dinner and I'm gonna clean my house and I'm gonna cook the dinner and I'm gonna be really tired at the end of Saturday night, but it's gonna be worth it. We're gonna build great human connection. Let's go.
Right. Well, I went to my neighbors. They had like a little decorating party in December and they had to drag me out. Listen, there were several of them that were like campaigning me. Come on, Rikimah. Come on, Rikimah. I finally go. And to my not surprise, I was not surprised. I had a great experience, right?
See?
But I needed 3 weeks of decompression.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that was about other areas of wellness for me, right? So
Hmm.
I dealt with social, had a great time. But then there was like this emotional component that showed up, this psychological component that showed up that I was like, yeah, now I got to tend to my garden. I'll see you guys in 3 weeks.
Well, when on that note, there are some people that like, you go to lunch with an old girlfriend or an old guy friend and you just talk and talk and talk. And then there's those people that you meet that some people just, again, they may be introverts or they may just not really like people that much. And
Yeah.
they don't talk. I've met friends of friends where I feel like it's an interview where I'm like, they're just ignoring me on their phone. And I'm like, so where did you say you were from again? Oh, you're a lawyer. What firm do you work for? Oh, how interesting. And they're like, yeah, super interesting. And I'm like, man, I'm getting tired, because I feel like this is a job,
That's
and
that's
so
great.
yeah, yeah,
Those
but
are the friends that I won't revisit, right? Like there's certainly some of those folks who like, for whatever reason, they're not as hospitable, they're not as open. And I say, I tell my son this because right now he's learning about picking his community. I say,
mhm,
son, you can do your part. But if people won't
mhm,
meet you in the middle, they might not be your people. And that's okay.
right.
Because
And you
not
start
everybody
to
is you.
Right. And there is a lot of, I think, truth to the fact that you do start to become the people you hang around. Yeah. And so it's like, it's not like you should just have every one of your friends be cookie cutter version of yourself, but like, there's a certain point where you got to be like, this is a really unhealthy relationship for me.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I can do it anymore. Like, hey, you can call me still, but I'm not going to be we can't be as close because I'm becoming like you and it's not somebody I want to be. So yeah, in regard to on the next thought, in regard to just extrovertedness and like going out there and building community and doing things in relationships with COVID-19, how did that impact what you saw with Gen Zers and
Oh yeah.
millennials?
Oh yeah. I mean, depression went through the roof.
Mm,
People were not okay, literally. And it wasn't enough to do Zoom parties. It wasn't enough to be on the phone or to FaceTime. That was not enough, literally. I mean, it got so bad that I was like, if you are someone who's getting so blue that you are going down a funnel, I'm gonna need you to put like 5 of those masks on, and I need you to go get your hug.
mm,
Literally. And some people had to create bubbles. I know we did. We had a bubble of people where we were like, this is our agreement. Our agreement to each other is that we will not put each other in jeopardy. If there's a cough, if you're around other
mm,
people, let's talk about it. Right.
right.
When we would travel, because we still traveled through the pandemic.
Hmm.
Because that was a part of my wellness. I was like, no, ma'am. No, I will not feel stuck. Like this is giving me claustrophobic vibes. Like this is giving stuckness, right?
Yeah.
Like so I said to my son, I said, hey, son, let's talk about it. Are we getting vaccinated or not? Right. It was a choice. I wanted it to be a choice for him also. Son, you can
Mhm.
stay here with grandpa, or you can stay here with your aunt, but mom is feeling away and I gotta go. So there were a lot of people who got so wired up about it that they couldn't do anything. And
Yeah.
it was kind of stuck in time, right? Then there were some of us who were like, we're not going to be crazy about it. We're not going to get out of control, but we're
Hmm.
not going to stop living because they're telling us that this is the state of play right now. Right.
Mm.
And then there were other people who were just like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna die from something, so I'm out.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think you have a good point where like it is up to each individual
yeah,
person,
that's right.
and also you can't just stop life. I mean, you can't
That's
stop
right.
work and you can't stop running down the street. Some people are scared to go on a run because they may pass other people on the street.
Right.
You can't never drive anywhere to visit your parents or your family or friends. You can't like never fly in a plane. I mean, I don't know how people didn't fly in a plane for like a couple years.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
people didn't, and as a
yeah.
result, they were stunted. Because now when you see that the world is opening back up, employers are forcing people, not forcing, they kind of, but having people
Forcing. I'm just
right,
kidding.
right, right, yeah. Having them go to these conferences and all these things, you can tell because they're unable to reintegrate properly. You
Yeah.
can tell the social sort of awkwardness that's shown up, right? Even at the schools. Part of the issue at the schools right now, the kids don't have common language anymore. They have
Mm,
their sea legs. And you saw that with employees also. You saw that with adults. So sometimes we laugh. Like when that present wrapping party happened, I told him, I said, listen, I feel like COVID took all of my wherewithal away because
Yeah.
now I'm like having to remind myself, what are some of those things I used to say to start conversations with people that I don't know? And if the room feels this way, is it really that it feels that way, or am I tripping? Like, am I just reading too into it? Like, so it made it so that even those of us who are trained in interacting with the world, it made it so even we were questioning.
Yeah. And then even like the smallest things, I know that we go to meetings and conferences now and like people are still like elbow bumping and I'm like, are we like never going to shake hands with people ever again? And then each person you go up to, you have to
Yeah,
wonder like,
yeah,
are they going to be mad if I try and shake their hand, or should I do the, or should I
yeah,
just be like, hello? And then they're like, I can't believe you won't shake my hand. That's so rude. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, everybody has a thing with everything these days. Like,
that's
I don't know
right.
what to do.
Right, that's right. And and there is, and it's okay to have consent, right? Like I always move in consent. I say, hey, I have a mask on because I have an immunosuppressed kid, and I
Mhm.
can't even come back with strep without worrying about this kid. Okay. If he
Right.
gets sick, he can't go to school, he can't go to
Mm,
practice. I mean, so it's about so much more than COVID in our experience, right?
yeah.
But when I'm around other people, I tell people, listen, I'm gonna open up some windows. I'm going to probably not be within spit distance of you because I don't need you spitting all over me either. And
Mhm.
I was always kooky like this anyway. Like I ain't like your germs all over me. So that was always my thing.
Yeah.
But I will ask for consent. Hey, you handshaking or are we just dabbing?
Mm,
What we doing around here? And I make a big joke about it because the truth is we are not speaking the same language no more.
yeah.
So a smile goes a long way. I smile at people all the way down the hallway. They don't even notice I'm smiling at them and I'm already smiling because I'm just, but I'm here, boo. Hi, everybody. Right.
Yeah.
I'm doing more grand entrances now too, just to get that high over with in the event that people don't want the handshake. They
Yeah.
don't want the hug. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's smart. Well, and on that note, how do you think organizations can ultimately help team members take more, just to, help them with their wellness?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think they need to start by asking people what would help them get well. But I
Mm,
think even before that, they need to be having people who are working with them so that they can discover what areas they feel unwell in the first place. Because
yeah.
9 out of 10, you ask the employees, well, what's making you feel blue? They don't have a language for it. So a lot
Right.
of the coaching and mentoring I end up having to do is because employers are like, I need you to make sure that they know that there are all these areas. And then I need you to ask the direct question because as an employer, I don't want to get sued. I don't
Mm,
know. And then once you figure out what those areas are, I need you to work with them and give them, tools and tips and tricks and stuff. So for the everyday person, I think, we wrote a book about wellness, the 8 pillars of wellness.
mhm.
And what I've been telling people is if you don't know where to start, get the book. The
Yeah.
book is going to tell you all you need to know about all 8 of these different, and these different pillars. And it goes one step further. It tries to give you examples for the millennial and the Gen
Mhm.
Zers, right?
Right.
Specifically, because I'm not an aging person, but nevertheless, it tries to give examples of all of the different things that you can do to try and get started on these areas. But I think the first part is the
Mhm.
education part of it all. So
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And then on the subject of school, because we touched a little bit on on school with
yeah.
kids, how can wellness be achieved for homeschooled families and caretakers and remote workers?
Yeah. So my son just went into the school system. He was homeschooled for the last 5 years. And
Ah,
I'll tell you one thing, I had to literally sit down with my son daily and say,
mm,
how are we doing? It took
yeah.
a lot of observation on my side. I made sure he had a therapist lingering in a corner. My
Hmm.
son is very much like, I don't want to talk to anybody except for you. And I'm like, mom's not equipped with all the tools, bud. And there are
Yeah.
some things that you don't want me to know. You're in girl zone now. I don't need to know all
Yeah,
something.
like, oh, tell
Oh,
me.
right? Like, and privacy is a thing. You're a teenager. We need to start to have boundaries with each other. So, I definitely made sure he had a therapist, not because something was wrong, but because I wanted him to have a neutral person to talk to.
Yeah.
Uh, we definitely went, like, I bought all of these books about like getting to know your body, you know,
Yeah.
am I
Yeah.
feeling good today? Right?
Yeah.
Like, all of these books that were specific to boys who are growing,
Hmm.
aging, right?
Yeah.
Then I opened the conversation. Hey, bud, if there are 3 things we can work on together, what you want to work on this week? What's going on for you? And that was probably the most impactful because I got to know my son deeper.
Mm. Yeah.
I got to, like, I discovered he struggles with anxiety. I had no idea. No idea.
Mm.
But the more he talked about like just the reaction, the physical reaction to things. And
Mm-hmm.
the more I started looking around, I said, oh, yeah, he does bite his finger. And I was like, crazy. Oh, okay. Because that's one of the biggest gifts that homeschool gave me was the gift of
Mm.
being able to watch him in real time as he acts out and says things and talks to people.
Yeah.
And, right.
Yeah, because then kids come home from school a lot of times. They don't want to talk about their day, and then you just don't know. You have no idea.
It's true. And also because you weren't there, I don't think they really want to go through all the hassle of saying all the things.
Yep.
We have to remember, especially the teenagers, these guys are lazy. They don't want to talk.
Mhm.
They don't want to say all of it. That's too much. That's too much oxygen in the air.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
That's true.
because now I ask and he's like, everything was fine. It's like, what do you mean fine? Nothing, everything was not fine. There was some point of the day that something wasn't fine because that's life, right? Life is life.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, this thing did happen. This kid did say the thing, or the teacher was yelling at everybody or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have to ask deep questions daily now and deeper than what I did when he was homeschooled.
Mm. Yeah. That's interesting. And I know that he was homeschooled mainly because you guys were traveling, and you've been to around 73 countries with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just talk a little bit more about what was it like raising a son as a global citizen?
Yeah, yeah, he tells people that all the time. He says, I'm of the global experience.
Mm.
It's been interesting. My son learned nonverbal communication before he learned verbal communication. So
Wow.
he met comrades overseas that were, speaking Russian, speaking French, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't need to be able to use the same language with you in order for them to play. I
Right.
watched a kid play with a kid that didn't speak English at all, and they played for hours
Yeah.
because they figured out the hand gestures. They
Mm.
figured out this thing over here, right?
Mhm.
And he did it for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So what I'll say is that he has learned how to literally talk to a little bit of anybody. If you are nonverbal, if you are verbal, doesn't matter. My son also plays with kids on the spectrum. Some of his favorite kids are autistic kids. Let me tell you, he is a party waiting to happen. He said that the autistic kids are the biggest turn up he has ever seen. He said they know how to live on the wild side. That's how he articulates it literally.
That's
So
so
he
cute.
loves hanging out with them. And he,
Aw.
because of his travels, he simply doesn't care about other people's, opinions of him. He's like,
Yeah.
look, I know I'm different. I know that I wear stuff from all over the world and it may look weird. It's not a part of,
Mm.
the Jordan family, for example, or
Right.
he'll say things like my teachers, are saying that I'm well above my years because I'm talking about things that they haven't gotten to, but in a much deeper way. He's
Mm.
fixated on World War One and two and some of these things. He's big on history.
Yeah.
He's a kid you want to get into a historical conversation with because he's going to take it there, right?
Right.
He's also the kid because he was homeschooled to our homeschool families, he taught himself how to build computers. So now he
Wow.
builds computers for people and stuff like that. So it allowed for him to meet other kids that were doing excellent things in the world also.
Mm. Yeah.
And it also taught him empathy. He's running into children that don't have what he has. He's
Yeah.
left behind so many video games, so many clothes items. He has taken so many people to lunch or to dinner.
Mm.
He has bought extra pairs of skates for just in case a kid comes that doesn't have it, right? So it's
Yeah.
taught him how to love up on the world in a very different way. And when
Mhm.
he's being mistreated, he's very aware that, hey, it's not about me, it's about them. And while
Mm.
I can have boundaries and not allow for you to mistreat me, I want you to know that, like, it's not that bad because it could be worse if you just
Right.
stepped outside of this little 4 block radius. You would
Mm.
that we
Yeah.
actually have it pretty okay.
Yeah. And so with the logistics of it, did did he like just bring all his schoolwork in his laptop while you guys traveled and just do his lessons every day or?
We use the world as our oyster. Listen, when we went
Mm.
to Barbados, part of why I justified it, because he put his finger on the map and said, we're going there today, Mom.
Mm.
Part of how I justified it was I said, he's going to learn about climate change because they are the only island that's built up. It's actually rising, not sinking, because they're on fossilized coral reefs.
Mm.
So he's learning about climate change. He's learning, and every time we go into a country, he's going to see it by sea, by air, by land, because he's
Wow.
going to know the geography. When he
Mhm.
learned about, we were out in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, the way he saw those mountains, because normally you would see it in the back of a history book and it shows you the little popped out 3D versions of the mountains. Malik
Yeah,
was climbing through those mountains as he was learning about those mountains, and not just the mountains, but the people. He was
that's
fixated
so
on the
cool.
women who were wearing the full garbs, all the black on, all the things. And it opened up all kinds of conversations. So usually when we go into a country, we will put together an itinerary that will take him to the zoos to go see pumas and jaguars. The last time we were in Belize, he learned about the rainforest and in the jungle,
Wow.
literally horsebacking, scaling the side of a mountain from a local, right? He's learning Spanish from a local, right? So we use those countries as our playground, as our school, as our classroom.
Well, there's no better way. It's like actually living what you're seeing. And then also, I mean, gosh, especially on the language part,
Yeah.
you learn a language so much faster when you just put yourself in the country and you're forced to figure it out, because I mean, it's like to me, like Spanish class in America is pathetic. I mean, it's just in the American school system, it's like just ridiculous where they're still saying things in English. The best Spanish teachers in the States are the ones that refuse to say anything in English.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, purple is purpura. It's like purpura, the camisa is purpura. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, we just got to figure it out. Okay, what's camisa? Oh, she's pointing my shirt. It's a shirt. Okay. Because then if you keep reverting back to the language. So I just think that's so cool. I do think your son will do something in his career that involves travel, geography, or do you
I
think?
think so. I think so. I mean, it's interesting. I believe he's going to. I know for hands down, he's going to date internationally. Let's be clear. He's definitely going to date internationally. And I'm here for all of that. I think that he is going to probably find something that has to do with the ocean. He is
Mhm.
enamored and in love with the ocean in a way that I will never be.
Yeah.
So as long as he is constantly in the water, near the water, on the water, he is at his happiest moments. So I think it's going to have something to do with water and something to do with
Neat.
it. So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, and on one more note about wellness, because you've seen a lot of different cultures and the different issues they face politically, economically, socially, just in the face of inequality, I wanted you to talk a little bit about collective grief.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Yeah. I mean, because that's deep, right? That's
On,
deep.
on a lower note.
We talk about collective, we talk about compound, right? Compound grief,
Mhm.
compound trauma. And the thing about that is, like I tell people, you got to fight like hell
Mm,
every single day to make sure that you are unraveling this onion that continues to do what it's going to do, right?
mm,
Whether it's here stateside, whether it's overseas with folks dealing with, different isms in their countries.
mm,
I do think that like every day, people, those folks who are dealing with that, and I'm going to add myself into it, quite frankly, because I do come from a population of folks who have been going through it for time and time and time, as many of our folks in the world, right? Um,
mhm,
every day you have to make a choice about whether or not if you're going to fight, because every day there's an opportunity for one more thing to happen.
mm.
And so
Yeah.
if we don't start somewhere, it starts to feel like it's over, it's too much. And I
Yeah.
think that that's why we're starting to see the rates of suicide and stuff like that go up, because folks are literally drowning in this grief that they can't shake. I tell
Mm,
my son all the time, I say, son, when you know that you're a part of an experience where it just won't stop,
mm,
it's the choice for us to say the only agency we have is to make sure that we are working every day on ourselves, that we are fighting every day to bring joy. Joy. So we call it radical joy. Radical joy, because at the height of when all the things are going pear-shaped, you're going to hear me being like, I'm in gratitude. Oh my goodness, I'm in
mm,
gratitude. I'm about to go skiing. I'm about to take these kids out rollerblading, right? Even when we have been, in places like, I remember the first time we went to Thailand and there was a bomb that went off over there. And it was the first time my son had been in a country that was
mm.
volatile, right? Thailand is
Yeah.
peaceful until you've got extremists doing extremist type behavioral stuff, right?
Right.
And I remember telling him at that moment, I said, the thing that really sits with me is that no matter where we are in the world, we are going to bump into groups of people who are going through it and who have been going through it. And the one
Yeah.
thing that they all share with us is this idea of resilience, this
Mm,
idea of knowing when we need to get ahead of a thing before it becomes too big, too much.
mm,
One of my relatives experiences the world that way. And some of it has to do with her psyche also. because in
Mm,
her mind, it's all happening to her. And so
mm,
what that does is that takes her agency away, right? It takes
yeah.
her ability to change things away, her strength to do that. And we are constantly reminding her, no, 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 no. Things are happening. It is true, things are happening. But how we experience the things that are happening and what we learn from the things that are happening are the two things that bring me the most joy. I
Mm,
didn't like what happened in Jamaica because I'm saying I'm in a country full of Black folk. This should have been the best experience of a lifetime. And instead, I ended up dealing with some, colonial experience and stuff like that. I mean,
mm,
it was really deep around there. And the choice around if I was going to let that be a continuation of how I can tend to feel in certain countries
yeah.
that don't want to see melanated folk, right? That was a choice because I said, well, if I fall into that, this whole thing is over. It's just
Yeah.
another point of trauma. But instead I said, nah, no, no, no. The agency is, I don't have to do it like this again. And I won't
Well,
do it like this again. Go ahead.
and no, and on that note, that's a great point because we just assume
Mm,
and we don't go to places. Like I remember my brother and his wife going to a wedding in South Dakota and they went into a random diner and they were being stared at by like everybody. And they were the only like Latinos in there. And my brother's like, everybody's staring at us. Like his wife's like, just ignore them. Like and one guy's like, build the wall. Out loud, and my brother's like, is he talking to us? And she's like,
Right.
stop, Sebastian, we're gonna get like beat up. But it's like you can't let that keep you from living. And
Yeah.
B,
Yeah.
the only way that that's ever gonna change is meeting those people and
Mm,
being around those people, being like,
that's
I
right.
have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a
Yeah,
United States citizen. I'm an
that's
American, just
that's
like you. You're no more of an American than I am. I was born
that's
here.
that's
Yeah,
right.
and so just and also on the flip side, just going into somebody else's country where they're all, different and
Yeah.
speaking and looking
Yeah.
and respecting them, but also being like, hey, let's be friends because we're all people, you know.
That's
I,
right.
I love
That's
to get to
right.
know you and your culture. So I love that you said that because a lot of times people don't travel. I think a
Yeah.
big thing is because
Yeah.
we don't know what that culture's like, and I don't frankly really want to know what that culture is like. And I think that's a really ignorant way to look at the world because
Yeah. Yeah.
we're all similar, we're all
The
people.
truth is I actually think it comes from a place of fear. I
Yeah.
think the fear of the unknown, right? And what I
Mhm.
tried to instill in my son is like, don't let fear dictate how you live, though. You can't live when you're in a state of fear all the time. And
Yeah.
you have to remember whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so put your faith in the universe, right?
Mm.
If you're a person who believes in God, put your faith in God. If you're a person who
Yeah.
like me, who's like, look, I'm believing in all the things because it must be true. Then I'm going to say, put your faith in the universe and believe that like what's for you is going to be for you. And that's how I live my life all the time. I don't allow for a lot of the things that are negative that can really plague our minds and our spirits to get me down because the other thing that I sit with is, but if I'm down, then who does my work? Who does what I was
Mhm.
put on this world to do? Right? Because I believe we were all put here to do a thing. And I think that the work I'm on and the work I'm in is on purpose for me. So I'm
Mm.
like, if I allow myself to go down this rabbit hole and not deploy the tools that I have that I'm aware of, I'm unable to be of service to anyone else who might struggle and who may not have those same tools. And I believe that my job is to share them and to
Yeah.
continue to be that I think that reminder for humanity that like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Of course it's hard. And it's okay because at the end of the day, like we get to decide how we internalize it, how it affects us, and how it shakes things up or shakes things down. That knowing that we have that control, knowing that we have that agency is single-handedly the one thing that I say people just got to hold on to is remember, we are only in control of ourselves. We are not in control of other people.
Yeah. And on that note, with access to wellness and just, different people in different areas,
Yeah.
why are some people given space and resources for their wellness and some are not? And just how can we kind of
Yeah.
work to bridge the gap and individually contribute to
Yeah.
bridging that gap?
Yeah, yeah. I think that sometimes it's a finance thing, right? And I think when we talk about resources, it gets into all the isms, whether you're
Mhm.
white, whether you're melanated, whether you are right, like it just goes
Yeah.
into all of these things. I think there are some organizations that care more about it than others. I think sometimes it's about the leadership. I've heard leaders say, I survived it, they'd be all right. And you're like, but you don't want people to survive. You want people to thrive. Like, what are we saying
Right.
today? Like, because we couldn't have it, we don't want that for other people. So then it gets into, the deeper parts of people, which is like, are you a self-centered type of person that's a low,
Mhm.
right? Let's
Yeah.
put P up in it. Or are you someone that cares about this next generation being better than us, being able to be more
Mhm.
equipped than us? Because the way I see it is every generation is supposed to have it better than we do. And I
Mm.
feel like that's the role that we're playing is I want to fight like heck for equality because I want my nieces to have her rights, because I want our sons to have their right, because I want people to live happily without worrying about unemployment rates and things like that. So yes, I want to be a contributor. I want to build businesses and offer jobs because hopefully
Mhm.
even in the five I can offer, it changes five people's lives. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so the idea of wellness, like it has been kept for, I think, who society deems as worthy or unworthy. And that only matters if we're waiting for society to deem it.
Mm.
But if we are taking that power and that agency back, which is what we talked about, then if to have agency means that we're not waiting for anyone to give us their blessings of whether or not we can be well, because we're saying, no, no, we're choosing to be well. And I'm not asking, I'm telling that I'm going to be well
Right.
in this world that I'm in.
Right. No, I love that. And some of the last questions I had for you were they were very similar to kind of what we've already talked about, but maybe just as like a conclusion wrap up for the brats who have been listening. What's the biggest thing? And there's so many things about wellness that you've learned and that but just kind of the biggest thing you've learned since becoming a wellness advocate.
Yeah, yeah. I have learned that each and every one of us has one area of wellness that we will be fighting for the rest of our lives. For
Hmm.
me, it became environmental because I was raised in the projects. I came
Hmm.
through a lot of childhood violence. There was a lot of unknowns. There were, candles for lights. There was ketchup sandwiches for food. So if people see me in the world, then they'll say she's working on an environmental thing. That has always been her plight, the environmental. If they see me feeding kids in the street, they know that that is very much about environmental, but also, spiritual and social, right? So it comes from whatever transpired in my youth. I'm very clear that that's what I've been undoing for years. I think for all of your listeners out there, there is a question about if they go through those 8 pillars, which one is going to grab their attention because it's going to hit something that's a little bit deeper than just their immediate experience today. Mine was environmental. Maybe theirs will be something else.
I love that. Yeah. So, guys, think about that. Rikimah, it was such a pleasure to have you on again. I loved our part two, and I'm sure our travel brats will love it too. And guys, stay tuned. Check out Rikimah's website. Check out her book, Total Wellness: A Millennial and Gen Z Guide to Living a More Balanced Life. And you have a book of love notes for Black from Brown women. So check that out, guys, too, if you're interested. And tune in next time for part three, your basic, awesome travel tips from the woman who has traveled everywhere. So, Rikimah, thank you again for coming on, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me. Take it easy.